If your organization is ready to embrace edge computing, we have good news. The 2023 AT&T Cybersecurity Insights Report provides everything you need to know to get started. In the report, we identify the common characteristics of edge computing. We found edge use cases are rapidly coming online, and we reveal how to secure edge computing. Most importantly, you'll learn how to prepare for your edge ecosystem. Get your complimentary copy of the report today. Visit securityweekly.com/ATT cybersecurity. That's securityweekly.com/ATT cybersecurity.
Make sure you subscribe to the Below the Surface podcast by Eclipsium in partnership with CRA. Myself and Scott Shefferman host this show, and we've had the pleasure of speaking with some amazing guests, including Zeno Kova, Richard Hughes, Vincent Zimmer, and more. We discuss topics related to firmware and supply chain security, uncovering those pesky vulnerabilities that lie, well, below the surface in your environments. You can find all the episodes and subscribe by visiting eclipsium.com/podcast or searching for Below the Surface in your favorite podcast catcher.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. We're always looking for great guests on all the Security Weekly shows. Submit your suggestions by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. I just finished going through all of mine, so mine is empty. Go fill it up again. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news, check out securityweekly.com/ESW346 if you want to follow along through the show notes as we go through our different news items here. Sometimes we don't get through all of them, so there's some extra ones to check out there that you should go read in your own time. All right. Coming out of that last conversation, Katie, I kind of feel like we should just jump to yours first since it's already been mentioned during the last interview.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different. Probably everybody at least skimmed the news about Rite Aid. So if you haven't, the background on this.
I intentionally didn't read it because I wanted to ask questions.
Okay, so 2 or so weeks ago, my newsletters get jumbled up in my head because I write them out of order. There was a ruling that Rite Aid started using facial recognition technology in their stores a long time ago. But the FTC...
And Rite Aid is like a pharmacy, right?
Correct, yes. So,
okay. Yeah, because we don't have them.
We'll back up to ground zero. So Rite Aid, a U.S.-based drugstore chain, one of the biggest in the U.S., started using facial recognition technology, going way back, and they were just charged by the FTC for misuse and abuse of facial recognition technology in their stores. So what happened was in the 8 years that Rite Aid was using this technology in their stores, it wasn't like facial recognition technology is today. It's not quite as advanced as what Sabrina was talking about. And the inputs to the software was basically, as I understand it, was basically processing the data, but the drugstore chain, the Rite Aid stores, the individual stores, could use inputs from their CCTV cameras, from employees' cell phone cameras. And in 2012, when Rite Aid first deployed the technology, we're going back 11, 12 years here, right? The technology was not even close to the same. So the quality of the images they were uploading was shoddy. And the way that the data was being processed at the time, so the algorithms that were used were not nearly as sophisticated as today. On top of that, so this is multi-layered, at the time in particular, although still today, the technology isn't foolproof, and the data suggests that it is not as accurate for certain demographics as others. I'm not going to spill the beans on what the data says because it's partially in the story, and you can also, there are a lot of links to what the data says, including the NIST data that Sabrina mentioned during her interview. So going back to Rite Aid, they were using the technology. the vendor of this particular technology in 2012 to 2020 had a liability release right in their contracts, basically saying we have zero responsibility or liability for the outcome. So some exec or execs at Rite Aid Corporate signed off on this, even with the liability clause in there, used the data and used the data to basically go after people in their stores. So it's not just, okay, Rite Aid used it in all their stores.
So oftentimes
right. But it gets even more complicated because they chose specific stores in specific areas, which were lower income, that targeted people of color. So it's this multi-layered, complicated situation in which Rite Aid is trying to say, hey, this was a long time ago and the technology wasn't even deployed in our stores when this ruling came out. But the reality is that they used it in specific situations where the technology was known even at the time, even in 2012, when they first deployed it, going through to 2020, where the technology as a whole, we're not talking about the specific vendor, but the technology as a whole isn't known to be as accurate for the specific demographics of the stores in which Rite Aid chose to deploy this technology. They did not deploy it equally, unilaterally. It was very targeted. And so the FTC said, sorry, you used bad technology on a targeted basis, used really bad data inputs. We never check, nobody ever checked these algorithms. And then your store employees who, oh, by the way, weren't trained on how to use this data, took some outputs and decided on their own how to apprehend customers, in some cases embarrassed them, ridiculed them, forced them to leave stores, and basically violated their personal privacy. So it gets very complicated if you look into all avenues of it, but it's a good example of what not to do if you want to buy facial recognition technology and use it in your organization for any purpose.
Yep. Notably, false positives vary tremendously, but are both notably higher for both false positives and false negatives for Black, Latino, and Asian individuals and women than they are for white men.
Oh, and young and old people. So if you're a middle-aged white guy, you're great.
Yeah.
But if you're anything but, the technology isn't quite there yet, especially if the data inputs aren't being checked. You use CCTV cameras, you use a cell phone image. Oh, and one of the data inputs that was cited in multiple of the stories that I read about this, some of the employees in the stores like the security guards, the physical security guards, were using pictures of pictures. So they were taking pictures with their 2012 or 2015 cell phone cameras, using that, uploading it to the technology and going, that's the guy, that's the woman, that's the whomever. Garbage in, garbage out. We've been talking about it in all sorts of security technology for years. And it's especially true when it comes to, machine learning, AI, LLMs, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, there's no excuse here. Like everywhere you could screw up with this, they screwed up with this. Bad technology, bad or non-existent procedures, not training employees, not warning customers, like everything you could do wrong, they managed to, almost like it was a checklist. It was like, how do we screw this up? And they checked all the boxes.
With a lot of this technology, the biases are pretty large as well. And I think that's one of the things that we've got to figure out as a society to ensure that no matter what you look like, who you are, that the technology at least represents the community as well as possible and is able to understand that. And certainly companies, when they're putting together products, that should be part of what they're talking about, whether it's training an AI, whether it's working with biometrics, whatever it is. I mean, I've heard of many different stories across technology, even from the simple the automatic hand, the thing that washes your hands when you go into a public restroom or in the airport or something, working for people that look like me, but then not for people that don't look like me. The biases are inherent across all of these things, and if it doesn't work well for something as simple and basic as making a faucet put out water so you can wash your hands, what chance do we have of this thing understanding what people look like when you're talking about biometric, or even things that are happening now where AI is monitoring cameras and determining who's walking in and out of a space, and then maybe even correlating that with actual identification, as we've seen before. Certain apps that were like, if you point this camera at someone on your phone, it's going to identify who that person is and link them to their social media. So it becomes more and more and more important that we ensure that there's a way to remove bias from these systems, at least have some public recognition of it. And the company itself discusses how they're trying to limit bias in these systems, which is going to get into it.
And part of the reason I didn't want to hammer Sabrina on this, especially, she had so much good data and so many good points, but the NIST study, it's, I think, 82 pages. And yes, I read all of them, every single word on those pages. And they talk about
insomnia, I'm sure.
And I just twitch in the middle of the night now. I'm scared. But it's great that they're doing this testing. But the thing is, it's completely voluntary. And so if you're trying to measure the industry, if you are trying to measure the progress, if you are trying to see about the accuracy of this technology, facial recognition technology, which is now broken out into 2 segments, you can't do it. You can't do it when testing is voluntary. You can't do it when people can opt out of certain areas. You can't do it when there is no normalization of the data. You can't do it when not even the components are standardized. So while NIST is doing the best job that they can with what they have, until there is some sort of testing that is ubiquitous across the industry, we will never know how good or bad this technology is on the whole. So it very, very much comes down to independent vendor. And it also comes down to honesty, integrity, and ethics. And that's a much harder thing to measure.
And every time a system is rolled out like this and the mistakes are made, it erodes trust in that system, whatever that might be. And then people who are already distrustful of the government or technology become even less trustful and talk about how these things are dangerous. I mean, there's a certain level of trust when you have an iPhone and you allow it to scan your face so you can get onto the system. So we trade a little bit of that potential privacy with the easeability or usability, ease of use for that device. But that's my phone. I feel like I have some sort of control about it. But when I'm walking into buildings or in public spaces, and I'm getting tracked because of some AI controlled camera that's identifying who I am. And these tests are happening all over the country and all over the world now. How do you know how your data is being used? How is it being protected? And what are the biases behind it? And what happens with false positives if it identifies me somewhere where I'm not at a time when a crime is being made? I mean, we've talked about that on the show as well.
And it's really very, very scary when you're talking about biometrics. And, we were joking before the show, for anybody listening, if you were listening to the promos, there were a couple of promos that Adrian recorded when he was sick. And so his voice doesn't even really sound like his voice. And theoretically, the technology that we have today for voice recognition systems could identify that, because it could it's not just the tone and the timbre, but it's the patterns of the voice. It's the inflections that he uses, right? Mm-hmm. So theoretically, a very, very good system could read through that, but who's to say all systems are created equal? They are not, right?
Yeah,
and
I didn't recognize my own voice, and I've heard my own voice quite a bit. I know it sounds different when you hear it recorded, but I go back and listen to myself so I can improve how I present on the podcast. And I think it wasn't until the second ad that I was like, wait, that's me. Because my brain is sitting here thinking, who is that? Who's reading this? I thought I read all my own. ad reads on this show.
It's almost like an identical twin that looks in the mirror and sees their sibling instead of them.
Right. And it's funny when we're talking about it this way, but what happens if there's some sort of scenario in which you're misidentified or you can't be identified or verified because you've got a really bad cold or laryngitis, right? What happens when the technology itself can't actually keep up or is flawed or has been intentionally tampered with to make sure that that tone, that timbre, that, you know, what happens, because it doesn't take a lot to mess up these algorithms.
I think that's one of the most concerning things is, you know, the more bad technology is out there and the more that people are able to basically self-certify this kind of stuff, you know, people with bad intent, it just enables them to abuse it more.
And how long would it take to identify if a major AI model has been tampered with? How much would it take for somebody to go in and tamper with it ever so slightly so that the results sort of shift over time? So it's not this like dramatic, all of a sudden things are wonky. You could really poison a system drip by drip.
Sure, but I'm just talking about like humans having some leeway. You know, I'm not even talking about tampering with the AI algorithms. I'm talking about where the human gets the final, you know, oh yeah, that's the person. You know, they get the final decision on it, and the AI is bad enough that it'll support, you know, their decision, which is wrong.
Right.
So
right.
I think it enables abuse.
Yeah, in the case of Rite Aid, nobody went to jail, thank goodness. But you could see how that would be, you know, somebody could be dragged into a police station. You know, they might not end up in jail because if people are doing their job, they would find out that this is wrong if the person has been misidentified. But that's pretty traumatic. I imagine I would be traumatized if somebody accused me of shoplifting and a cop came in and dragged me to jail and questioned me. I don't think I'd be super happy about that.
Did you see the third squirrel story I added? The one about the UK post office scandal with Fujitsu?
I did not.
Yeah, you might have to refresh for that if you. I think I added it a few hours ago, but yeah, that one I don't want to get to squirrel. Well, I mean, we could run through it, but it's basically that. It's like over a 15-year period, over 700 sub-postmasters were wrongly prosecuted for fraud, false accounting, and theft, with many imprisoned, losing their livelihoods, and facing bankruptcy. I think there were 4 suicides related to that as well.
Technology can destroy lives if not done correctly.
Just because I don't think this had anything to do with biometrics or video or anything like that. You know, I think this was more. I wasn't able to find or dig into much of the technical reasons why it happened, but the fact that it went on for 15 years, and that the software makers still haven't been held to account for it, and that it affected 700 people, is just incredible. And the reason it's back in the news now is the BBC made a 4-part like a docudrama about it.
Wow. To get us even more down the squirrel story road, last weekend I saw the movie The Beekeeper. Mm-hmm. And from a cybersecurity point of view, it's actually pretty fascinating, right? Because the premise is that this super secret military guy goes on a rampage after a sketchy conglomerate of companies scams an older woman online, basically steals her credentials, IT support scam, steals $2 million from her, and she ends up killing herself. Hmm. And of course, it's a Jason Statham, I don't know how to say his name, movie. And so it's an action. It's an action movie. It's absurd in how it plays out.
Oh, Jason Statham movies are awesome. including
They
that
are.
documentary.
It was so much fun. It was ridiculously fun. But from a cybersecurity point of view, I'm watching this. On the one hand, I'm like, yeah, go get him, you beekeeper. And, he's like killing 20 Navy SEALs at once, and it's absurd. But from a cybersecurity point of view, it could, like, this kind of thing happens all the time. And my husband's asking me, he's like, does this happen? I'm like, what? Yeah. Why do you think it's in the news all the time? Like, tell your parents, tell your grandparents. Like, don't ever call somebody back on a support number. Like, could they actually take millions of people's dollars? Yeah, it happens every freaking day. So life imitating art, imitating life. Go watch the movie. It was worth the $20 or whatever. It was fun.
The week before I spoke at Black Hat for the first time, my dad fell prey to a HP printer support scam because he Googled for HP printer support, called the first number there, gave the credit card information, installed whatever they sent him. And yeah, I got a panic call the next morning from my mom going, I don't know what your dad did with the computer, but can you help us? And I'm like, I'm supposed to be going to Vegas, but yes, I'll help out with that. I said, unplug it and I'll figure it out when I get back. I had a friend who does forensics check it, and nothing malicious was done on it. But it was just the money that they'd charged the credit card for this printer support thing. It was ridiculous. It's so easy to have happen.
How many times now has Google, like, the very first results been just straight up malicious? Like, that's been a thing for a while now, where sponsored results have malicious intent behind them.
Absolutely.
And it's just getting less and less useful in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. So search has become awful, and Google used to be the best, and they're just not anymore. It's very difficult to find things. Speaking of movies that were not great, I saw the Netflix movie Leave the World Behind, which supposedly talks about a cyber attack and how the impacts the United States and what's going on. Go in with low expectations. There's some interesting things there where like Teslas are self-driving and blocking up the road, which was on the news, and it's just, there's so many Teslas that they use in that scene, which is kind of cool to watch, but because it builds suspense and drama and stuff. But it's like, how does this happen where all these different Teslas are being self-driven somehow by something else in a situation which, there was a couple hackers years ago at Black Hat that talked about how they took over the Jeep and did stuff, but the scale of the movie just didn't track for me, and the way the things came together, it felt like Lost as a movie, where you went in with some questions. As you went through it, you had more questions. It seemed like they were trying to reveal answers by the different perspectives of the different people. But as they revealed things that was supposed to be like this big, I go, okay, but we already knew that. What about these other things? Like, what does that mean? And it just, how did that happen? What is this? It just going with low expectations. And it was very much a downer type movie. So if I think you'd be better off watching Cocaine Bear, honestly.
Yeah, it's kind of becoming a trope, right? Like almost like the extreme weather movies, where he has a bunch of things they're paranoid about, or scary thoughts that occur to them, and then they just build a script around it. It's like the idea of the self-driving cars, no longer listening to us, or doing something malicious or something like that. Like the what are those books? They still haven't turned them into movies, but Freedom and Damon by Suarez.
Oh yes, Daniel Suarez, fantastic movies.
Yeah,
Damon, like that reading that book, it gave me goosebumps. Like, that was really cool.
Oh yeah, it's definitely scary. Like I think those books did it right. In terms of not just taking some loose ideas and building a script around it, but there's an actual plot, and things were much more intentional, but yeah, still scary, still out there, very much like a Michael Crichton type thing. Like, let's take the cutting edge of technology and take a next step that isn't quite there yet. We can't recreate dinosaurs yet, but there are companies trying to bring back mammoths and stuff like that. So It's like a somewhat plausible next step. Yeah, people make YouTube videos tearing it down, and saying no, that's impossible right now. But yeah, it makes some interesting entertainment, and sometimes it's something regulators want to think about, and folks actually innovating with this technology. The kinds of things that everybody loves to quote Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park, right? Like your scientists were so busy.
All the time.
Yeah, your scientists were so busy wondering if they never stopped to think whether or not they should. And we're going to talk about AI a lot this year, and that's going to apply to a lot of the situations we talk about and a lot of the products that we see pop up. We just had CES, so we get a little bit of a window into all the stuff that really doesn't need AI shoved into it, that's going to get AI shoved into it anyway.
A toaster. I'm looking forward to the AI toaster that's going to perfectly toast my bagel.
Or the AI toothbrush, or there are just certain things I just don't. And also tracking your data. Think about that. Oh, Sean eats toast 4 days a week. 3 of those days.
Bagels. I don't not toast bagels. I'll say that publicly.
3 days a week. And 2 of those days he eats them before 7 a.m. and the other one it's 7. I don't know, but just think of the data it's going to process, and then somebody's going to be looking at this, and you're going to be like, "Why are you tracking my bagel toasting and eating schedule?" But it's absolutely happening. Why? I don't know, but it is.
Maybe if my toaster can connect to my phone and then know when my alarm goes off my phone to wake me up, then I'll have my bagel ready when I get downstairs, which won't be at 7. It'll be much later than that. But yeah.
Well, if there are cost makers you can pre-program, why hasn't somebody made a toaster that you can pre-program? Right? There should be one.
And then just like in the Transformer movie, they all come alive and attack their people. But yeah, I saw in CES they had a dog device, a collar that was tracking health and metrics around that, including heart rates. And my first reaction was, why? And then I thought of a friend of mine that has a dog with a lot of health issues, and she would love having something like that could track it, look on an app, and identify maybe there's an irregular heart rate, or maybe the breathing has gone up or down or something, and the dog is stressed. So I get it. What's that?
I saw several devices that are just meant to be like companions for pets, pets who have anxiety when their owners are gone. And I have firsthand experience with pets like that. And that seems pretty reasonable. It's the difference of, sales saying, to sell more of this, we need the word AI to be in the packaging, and then building from there, versus somebody actually identifying a problem and AI being the right technology to solve that problem. But we're going to see more of the former than the latter, unfortunately.
Yeah. Are you saying we're getting to the point where now our dog needs a robot dog as an emotional support animal?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes another pet performs that function, but you can't guarantee that that second pet that you get is going to be emotionally supportive of the first. It could make the problem worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's when you just go to repet and then bring back the other one.
Before
I can actually see a really good use case for the dog health or cat or whatever pet health monitoring, because unlike humans, they can't and don't communicate in the same way. They can't be like, oh, this hurts today, or that feels off. And so that for me would be really, really useful. Could that be used maliciously? Sure. There's a whole trade out there for people who steal pets, which you're just like the lowest of low of human beings if you're actually stealing pets. Let me just get that out there. So could somebody tamper with this? Yeah, but those people are gross anyway. But that's a good use case, I think, tracking something that you otherwise can't get good information on. But things that you could get good information on, like a connected toaster, like why do you need to track my bagel toasting usage? Again, can you? Sure. Do you need to? Absolutely not. What does it create? It creates a whole set of data that will be tampered with at some point. Right now, the biggest risk is actually spam. I get a bazillion spam messages that get through my email filter because, they're not great algorithms there either. But at some point, something's going to really not work as well as it should because somebody has used this data in a bad way, just like the 23andMe case. I'm sure the 23andMe people were not thinking, oh yeah, we're going to really screw with people's lives here and disclose their DNA. But guess what? It happens.
Yeah. Well, I think there were probably lots of little moments where people were like, this is not the right way to do this, or this is not the best way to do this. And that kind of stuff snowballs. It's usually a combination of just lots of neglect and poor decisions. And they know it's neglect and poor decisions, but the justification is, look, we're a startup. We have limited resources. We have to pick and choose. Like if the company goes out of business, it doesn't help anybody. And there are ways that you justify making those bad decisions that result in these kinds of situations. It's death from 1,000 cuts in a lot of these cases. If you're listening, I don't know how much security stuff we're going to talk about today. There wasn't a whole lot of funding or acquisitions. It was a pretty light news day. So we're talking about dogs and AI. So I hope you enjoy that.
Yeah. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, Adrian, I saw in the list of news articles was the rabbit R1, and I've watched a bunch of videos this week about that. I thought that this is such a fascinating idea as a device, and then I ping it back over to you and cue that up for you because I think it'd be great to talk about that in this context of AI and how it potentially could be used to be useful for people.
Yeah. So we just talked about search being awful, and the virtual assistants, the voice assistants we all have. I'm not going to say their names because I'll have wake words. I don't want to annoy anybody's devices in their homes.
I do. Alexa.
A lot of them never really got to that promised point of I think what we were sold on. Like okay, I can turn the lights on and off. Like I can get simple answers to simple questions and things like that, but you could never have a conversation with them, right? Like you also had to learn how to speak to them. Like you had to learn how to structure your speech so that it understood what you were asking for. And so to some extent, it was very frustrating for a lot of people because they had to train you how to talk to them. And even then, a good percentage of the time they misunderstand you. Maybe you're too far away from it. Maybe you're not facing it when you say it. And this new generation of LLMs where you can have a whole conversation where, like I've been using those Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and a couple times it's misunderstood me. And I don't have to start at the beginning. I can say, no, that's not what I said. I said this, and I can even spell it out. And it's like, oh, okay, gotcha. Like I don't have to repeat my whole original question. Like I can talk to it like a person. Like I can correct it. I can refine it. I can filter the results as I go through. And I can understand a device like the Rabbit. And I think the Rabbit has to be a device, right? Because there's going to be 1,000 apps that do something similar. But because they're apps, you won't remember the name of the app. You won't be able to find it. It'll work exactly the same way the 15 other apps work. Like I might as well just use the official ChatGPT OpenAI app, right? But by making it a separate device, it's something you don't have that decision fatigue. You don't have to go open your phone, unlock it, find the app. It's a separate device that hopefully you have lots of pockets because it looks not really chunky. I haven't seen it in person yet. I have no idea when it's going to get shipped to me or when I'm going to have it in my hands. But yeah, it's I don't know. Maybe it's all cargo pocket bros that bought these 40,000 that they sold out. Don't mind having it.
And for those listening, so that Rabbit R1 is a device that is specifically a way to interact with an AI from a personal personal guide perspective. So basically, what they showed at CES was using the rabbit. It uses a voice to text interface or speech to text interface, and you hold a button in order to interact with it and ask it a question. And the value prop for them, at least to the consumer, was that it's very fast and when it responds in milliseconds.
Yeah.
There's a few things that when you ask it something, if it's got to go and look at the internet or look at a data source to get it, it takes a little bit longer. The example they used was, what is the stock price for Coca-Cola? What's cool about it is the display is really only used to show you the relevant information that you asked about. So it showed the stock price, showed what the chart was there. And what was cool is they're talking about leveraging this action component of it, which is where you link your Rabbit R1 device or account to the different services that you have. And they had DoorDash as an example, Uber as an example. So now what you can do is just basically say, hey, I need to ride from here to here, or I need to get here by a certain time. And it would confirm that. You just basically click to confirm, and it would do that order for you. Same thing with DoorDash, order or pizza or what have you. It's interesting, though. Go ahead.
Very complex, like multi-step tasks also. Mm-hmm. So one of the things he does is he plans an entire vacation with it, ordering tickets, getting hotels, really cool. Tickets to events and stuff like that. And the first thing, and this is a real experience that you have a lot of time with this stuff that tries to automate everything for you, is it does too much. Like it does its job too well. So I love that they included that in the keynote. He's like, whoa, you got me doing way too much. And this is supposed to be a vacation. Lighten this up a bit. And it does. It cancels a bunch of the events. It gives him some extra time on days so he can chill in his hotel room or whatever. And that's the kind of thing that hasn't been there before, is that ongoing conversation where, like another one of the examples is, find me a pizza place that's open right now within 10 minutes of where I am. And to understand, first of all, I need to know where you are, what mode of transportation. So to understand what 10 minutes away means, are you walking, are you bicycling, do you have a car? Are you using public transport? And then you can say, oh, by the way, after you get your results, some of us have dietary restrictions, and then you can filter that list further. So just like a real human would pull out Google Maps and do the same kind of filtering, right? This kind of process. This device is saying, okay, we now have the technology where this thing can do a lot of that for you. So it'll be interesting to try out, because the other thing that made me interested in it with a lot of these devices, if the algorithm sucks, you're just stuck with it. It just sucks, right? Like the device is never going to get any better. You're like, okay, like maybe I get an update next month and I can use it then, but right now it's unusable. And one of the aspects of it is it does have like a web-based portal where you can go and you can train it and you can improve its training. So that attracted me to it also, is that I'm not just stuck with their algorithms, with their training. And if it sucks, I can't use it. And it's only $200. That was the big surprise. Yeah, exactly. No subscription, $200. It's also one of the biggest concerns, because I don't know how they're going to make money off it. It doesn't seem like they've monetized it well, or I don't know. So we'll see what happens there.
I'm sure
it's a fascinating device.
But this is, the thing that I'm starting to learn as I experiment more with, ChatGPT, GPT-4, and similar type models, is it's a huge time saver for ridiculous tasks that I would take hours, days, whatever. I think last week I talked about an example at work where one of my colleagues, it saved him like 3 to 4 days of work minimum. Something that another colleague showed us how to do, and I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Literally he doesn't have to waste all this time. So I'm trying to experiment with this, but in our personal lives too, like if you spend $200 on this device and in a year from now it's defunct, so what? Like, if it saved you that much time in 1 year for $200, let's hope this evolves in a good way. Could it be tampered with? Could it be used for ill? Yes. Could somebody manage to start tracking your life? Yeah, sure. But like right now I'm trying to plan a vacation and I can't make my air miles work. If some AI algorithm could make that work for me, I've already put in a good 40 hours of searching on every stupid website, correlating my miles with the places that we can go in a certain time period, given my time off, my husband's time off, the ability for us to get a dog sitter on the right days, like, mud season, if we want to go hiking, when does that, like, all of these things, if I could put that into some software and it could spit out a list of, you can go to these 3 places, it would save me hundreds of hours.
I see 2 main value props there. First, we talked about search engines being less useful today.
Yes.
So this is an inflection point. It's coming just in time, right? When all the sponsored and you can't find the results you're looking for, AI has stepped in at the right moment to hopefully fix that. And then the other is what you're pointing out, Katie, that a lot of people are realizing their time is very valuable to them, and anything that can save that time, you can see this thing just with a couple of queries paying for itself in terms of saving you time.
Yeah. I mean, think about, like, we just passed the holidays, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you could save all of that time, say, all right, I need this for Uncle Jack and this for my daughter Sue and this for my wife Ellen and this for Grandpa Joe. And it said, all right, here's where you go to get these things. Here are the best prices and here's the best route for you to travel given the holiday traffic. Boom. Like,
or if you're me, just order them online. Just get them ordered and have them show up.
Or even, where do you go for these sites? Could you Google them? Yeah, but if you don't want to have to Google them individually, same thing. How many times, Sean, have you Googled something and it says, this item, $199.99. You go to the actual page and they're like, oh, that's for the model you don't want. That's actually $349.99.
Yeah, or it's artificially low, like a Temu approach, and then you end up paying $100 for shipping and handling, for example.
No, there's no shipping on Temu. How do I know that? Because I ordered 2 silicone mini muffin molds for $5, no shipping.
Oh, I know there's no shipping on there because that's their strategy to take over the world.
100% they're going out of business. 100% they're mining my data. They're probably listening to me right now, but I got 2 mini muffin molds for $5.
Hope it was worth it.
I'm staying away from Temu.
Yeah, no.
I already wrote something nasty about the Chinese government a few years ago. I'm already on a list somewhere, probably. It's fine.
Well, they took all the lists. they've if they need a list, they'll just get it. They'll just help themselves.
Right. I can't talk about why they don't like me. So.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Security Weekly holiday party in Beijing next year?
No, not likely. So
I'll stay in the US of A.
A few things here. Let me see. What should we talk about before we have to wrap things up here? Let's see. There's one company, Anecdotes, landed a 25 million Series B. Sneak acquired a company that does like real-time application or application runtime data capture. So like debug logs, I guess, so they
pronounced Sneak. Okay. It's pronounced Sneak. S-N-Y-K.
Sneak. S-N-Y-K is pronounced, Sneak.
Okay.
The natural thing is to say Snick, the sound that Wolverine's claws make when they come out. But no, it's Sneak.
Okay, thank you.
It's intended to be kind of like a double entendre, I guess. Like I don't know what's sneaky about them, but I forget the story behind that.
We do number 9. I think it ties into what we were talking about. AI for personal productivity. And that's one of the areas that I've been most interested in and kind of what we've been talking about in this news segment is if you want to really everyone could use some sort of virtual personal assistant, right? And our cell phones, our smartphones, really at a certain point, we were kind of promised we would have this. And I've been waiting this for a very long time, where you basically say, here's what I need to get done. And it goes ahead and figures it out in the background. And like Katie was saying, I want to do a vacation. You provide some details around it. Give it some time to figure that out, and then you can adjust and tweak, and then it has that information for you. Whether it takes the thing an hour, 15 minutes, or a day to figure it out, you give it a little prompting, a little bit of adjustment, and then you just let it go and do its thing. And then say, yes, book, take care of it, or whatever it is.
Yeah. So, So let's talk about that. I did take this course the other day. It was a 2-hour course, $250. I didn't pay that because I've got the annual subscription, which gives me unlimited access to the courses at section. But that 2 hours went very quickly. You can tell that they've done it before. It was very polished. You got a ton of handouts that went along with it. You got one slide deck with presentation slides, which had a lot of useful information in it. And then another slide deck with all the exercises that you go through, which is kind of teaching you how to prompt, from these different personas or perspectives. They actually break down the AI into, you kind of think of it as different types of helpers, right? Like there were three main personas. There was the assistant, the strategist, and the creator. So those were kind of the three different perspectives that you view how you're using it and how you're prompting it through. And at the same time, they have you write down like a list of workflows that you really want to automate, save time on, stuff that's either important or really time intensive. And basically, as you go through this and you understand how the technology works and what it's good at and what it's not good at, you're looking to match it up with this laundry list of workflows you want to do. And it's a really useful exercise to go through, because you do, even if you match up, say you make an initial list of 16 things, even if 3 of those gets crossed off that list, that could be hours of your time every week that you're saving, right? So it goes quick. You don't have a whole lot of time to kind of enter your own prompts and follow along. You're mostly just, at least me, I was mostly just taking notes. I was following the chat in the Zoom also. There are 400 people there, and a lot of them already had a lot of experience with this stuff and were sharing really useful links and tips and stuff like that. So I saved the chat from the Zoom, and somebody even used AI to summarize the chat and shared that summary before we were even done. So right towards the end. So, that was pretty neat. And yeah, one of the key things I learned is that you probably don't want to use the same AI product for all things. Like I learned that Claude is much better at like the strategist role, being your strategist. And then ChatGPT is better at like being a creator or assistant. And I learned that Bard is still terrible. And that's another document that they shared is they've basically taken all the different products out there, they've rated them, and they've listed all the details for each one, like which ones are multimodal, which ones can I upload a PDF or an image into. And they have this great spreadsheet, this matrix of all the different features and the ratings that they've given it and information about them that was really useful also. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, great workshop. They do it once a month. $250 if you don't want to take any other courses there. But I'm taking a few other courses there later this month as I'm getting closer to a bit of a career change and starting a new day job. And I figure as long as I'm not doing that yet, I might as well do some learning and knock out some courses. So I've got 3 more courses I'm doing before the first week of February ends. And one of them is a John Strand course. One of them is a security thing.
Yeah, this looks really, really interesting. You know, everything you've brought up this week, last week, from this provider, they all look really interesting and really valuable. I mean, especially if you can distill the basics down, just to get a leg up on this stuff right now, because you know, the last thing you want to do, especially, you know, for people sort of mid-ish career, like I think the three of us are, is get complacent with your technology. And, you know, you don't want to be one of those people who's like, well, we've always been doing it this way. And you do, unfortunately, hear a lot of that in security. You know, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to automate that. I need to check this. I need to manually intervene in that. I don't want to be one of those people 10 years from now who doesn't understand this, because it needs to be part of my job. It will be part of everybody's job. And especially just I've seen in the last couple of months alone, some of my colleagues use really basic stuff to automate certain workflows and save themselves hours and hours of time on really simple things that they were like, Jesus, I wish I had this 10 years ago. And when you have that eye-popping moment.
And it's not just all you in a text box, you know, putting in prompts and looking at responses. Like I've built stuff in Zapier with this, you know, so you can integrate this with your Google spreadsheets and your Monday and all that stuff as well. You can create fully automated workflows that incorporate AI as well. So yeah, let's do a few quick squirrel stories and we'll get out of here. So number 13 cracked me up, because already phones are getting pretty tall and skinny. But if you miss a BlackBerry keyboard, this is a case for your iPhone that basically adds a BlackBerry keyboard to it. Tactile, individual QWERTY buttons. It's not an actual BlackBerry keyboard, but similar enough that description will give you a visual picture of it. So I
guess I'll have to upgrade my iPhone so I can get one.
Does it have an extra battery in it? Because $140, like that's a lot for a keyboard. I would hope it adds some charging to it.
Yeah, it's just pass-through charging.
Yeah, but I mean, a mechanical keyboard is $140. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, it looks like it's very well made. It's attractive looking. People are going to flip out when you pull that thing out. I can't imagine the pocket.
That's kind of why I like it.
I can't imagine the pocket that fits comfortably. And I feel like, you know, like the iPhone Max models barely fit into men's pockets, much less women's pants pockets these days. But that makes it like a full 2 or 3 inches longer. So,
but you can get it in
there is no battery in
London Sky.
Huh?
You can get it in Bumblebee or London Sky, so it's really trendy and stylish. So maybe you just walk around holding it.
I like the yellow. Oh yeah, you just hold it in your hand.
Yeah, because it's trendy.
And then the other item here was one that came out of CES, which is Gyrogears Gyro Glove, which I thought was kind of cool, because that's if I had gone into another career, or if I were to just quit cybersecurity and go into something else, you know, designing and building prosthetics is something that I thought would be really neat, really a lot of fun, but also rewarding. And this is it's not a prosthetic; it's a hand stabilizing glove for people with tremors, which I thought was a really cool thing to build.
Absolutely.
So it's just a glove you wear in your hand. It's got a motor situated around where your arm is, a battery a little further up the arm, and it's something that's it's all attached to like a stretchy material that you can just slide on your hand. Looks kind of like those things that people wear when they have like carpal tunnel issues, something like that. And yeah, it keeps your hand from shaking, so you can pick stuff up without dropping it or spilling a drink, or, you know, whatever you can't do because you have tremors. So I thought that was cool.
I was just watching the video without sound. It looks pretty cool. I wonder how lightweight it is.
It doesn't look, I mean, it's a first gen product. It doesn't look very lightweight at all. It's pretty bulky. But,
yeah, that's what it looks like. But
it's not going to get in the way of you doing anything, I don't think, unless you need to fit your hand into like a slender opening for some reason. Like you might knock some stuff over reaching into the fridge for something. You just have to be aware that it sticks out 1.5 to 2 inches from the back of your hand. But yeah, looks like it's really cool to see devices like this made, because I think we have the technology to make a lot of stuff like this now, but there's just not a lot of overlap between people who have issues like tremors and people who are inventing stuff like this. So I feel like it's just a lack of imagination, that keeps a lot of this stuff from hitting the market. So, hopefully this does well and isn't like an $80,000 product that you have to get with a prescription from your doctor or something like that. I hate it when it happens when it becomes a medical device, kind of.
Yeah, because then you have to give it your social security number.
Yeah.
Well,
that brings us around full circle.
There are a lot of bad things happening in healthcare going on, so maybe some entrepreneurs can put their energies into really good stuff to help people, because our healthcare industry is not going in a good direction right now.
Yeah, they still have to. I mean, that's I think a more systemic problem that we have to solve. But yeah, with that, I think that's a good place to wrap. Katie and Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. This is the first one of our 2-segment shows. I like doing the 2 segments. It's definitely easier to prep for and easier to do. I was starting to run out of energy at the end of the 3-segment show. Thanks, guys. If you're listening along, we'll be back next week, and we'll see you then.